This is Antoinette James, one voice belonging to We the People. The following is a talk-through of my blog COVID-19, a Who Coup to Manipulate You, link in the description. You can also download a summary transcript of this podcast for free in PDF form from my website, antoinettejames.com. In this podcast, we'll look at 17 red flags that are telltale signs that some people in high places not only knew this coronavirus was going to be released, but were part of it. And I suggest our globalist governments have been given efficient instructions on how to lock the people down and how to keep them in awe of their leaders. Remember in podcast 1, we defined what red flags were in the context of a false flag event like this virus scam. Red flags often stand out as being odd or inconsistent with what we see and what we are being told by official sources. The red flags noted before and during this pandemic of 2020 strongly suggests the UN, the elite, and our globalist socialist leaders knew this very carefully timed coronavirus would be the one to puff up out of all proportions. So let's go through some of the red flags that are very clear. The first red flag. Scientists around the world recorded an unprecedented acceleration in pollution leading up to the release of the virus. This is a red flag because pollution increases respiratory problems in cities, compromising people's immune system, making them sitting ducks should they contract, for example, a virus. The second red flag, the Chinese virus was released in Wuhan at a large social gathering in November 2019. This was leading up to the Chinese New Year, when there's a lot of internal movement in the country. Movement facilitates the spread of viruses. The third red flag is, typically, with little scientific analysis, the public is being told that it was contracted from an animal. For this virus, bats were chosen as the carrier. The fourth red flag, the outbreak was initially hushed by Chinese officials, evidence destroyed, and the whistleblower doctor permanently silenced by death. The fifth, a novel was written several years before, titled Eyes of Darkness, about a deadly virus released from a laboratory in Wuhan, China. Number 6, Netflix, of which Michelle and Barack Obama are producers, published a series called Pandemic, due for release in 2020 to coincide with the Wuhan coronavirus. What makes this more a piece of social engineering is that Bill Gates features in Pandemic, and he is the hero, the one that saves the world. What were the odds, eh? The seventh red flag, the usual suspects are always circling. The globalist elites have been on an all-out campaign to have the populist uprising around the world crushed. First it was Brexit, then the Trump presidency, followed by the French Yellow Vest demonstrations that Macron could not subdue. A domino effect to the political right and away from socialism was burgeoning throughout Europe. The elites knew they could not turn the political tide. However, a world pandemic and fear in the people could do it. Number 8, the coronavirus patents and the research on the vaccines were all pretty much underway before the pandemic outbreak. The World Health Organization, in collusion with Bill Gates, have the monopoly. The financial rewards will be enormous if governments make vaccines mandatory. And if we the people do not stop them, they will, as part of the United Nations Agenda 21 goals. 9. C-19 comet is due to pass the Earth on May the 31st, 2020. If you get my book, We Are Revolting, you will read evidence that the elite are Luciferians, as with the United Nations. We will go into this a little bit further in podcast 3 of this series. For now, however, astrology is extremely important to them. Comets are also part of the ancient mystery religion that sits on Luciferianism. Comets are an omen of disaster. The 10th red flag, knowing that the ancient mystery Luciferian beliefs are held in common by the elites, the Vatican, and the United Nations, it is of no surprise that Papal Rome, saint of pandemics, is Saint Corona. The 11th red flag, Hollywood and sports industries are tools used by the elite to control and contain thought, to distract from the truth with the show we are all living through. Many celebrities stopped studio appearances, and many are announcing that they too have the virus to whip the public into a frenzy. Of course, none will die. It is a neuro-linguistic programming trick of solidarity that, of course, is fiction. Our idols are suffering too, it's supposed to engender. The 12th red flag? In February 2017, Dr. Anthony Fauci spoke publicly about a surprise breakout for the Trump administration. Fauci is a holdover from previous globalist governments in the USA dedicated to the New World Order. He, along with the corrupt Deborah Berg, have connections with the fraudulent Clinton Foundation and are part of PEPFAR, a highly dubious organization with tightly closed books. Trump did not want Berg in his administration, being an Obama holdover, but was persuaded to have her. Fauci, a Roman Catholic, was educated at the exclusive Jesuit Regis High School and then going on to the Jesuit College of Holy Cross. This sets the scene for Jesuit Vatican control. Fauci's name is connected to AIDS and Ebola, along with swine and bird flu, all known to be laboratory designed and released by the deep state. The deep state, or the shadow government, is run from the usual organizations such as the CIA. The CIA is full of Nazis. The first lot were repatriated in the US after being smuggled out of defeated Nazi Germany in Operation Paperclip. Hitler's Nazi regime was promoted and funded by the Vatican. Fauci, Berg, and PEPFAR are a whole rabbit hole of corruption needing to be investigated. Fauci's body language standing behind President Trump while he signed the $1 trillion relief package for the people of the US said it all. The 13th red flag? A giveaway red flag to support the notion this coronavirus was deliberately released. Typically immediately before a false flag event, Wuhan release of the virus, there is an elite personality observed in some type of signal. Two examples in recent history are: 1. While Notre Dame burnt, Michelle Obama was on a boat cruise on the Seine. The silver necklace she wore said burning. The second was John Podesta's visit to New Zealand a few days before the elite planned Christchurch, New Zealand mosque shooting. He spoke about terrorism. Weeks before the coronavirus, the elite Bill Gates gathered the movers and shakers together at Event 201. 14th red flag? During 2019, an unprecedented number of elite CEOs from powerful companies resigned. Early 2020, another 219 were reported to leave their positions as CEO. Of course, Bill Gates' name was on the list as he left Microsoft and other companies that he was CEO of. This red flag smacks of rats leaving the financial sinking ship, as they knew the world's economy was about to tank. 15th red flag. These same elite were observed congregating in Wyoming and in other places where suspected elite high-spec underground bunkers are located. Either the virus is yet to do its worst, or they fled to safety on the knowledge that the virus was to be catastrophic for the population, killing millions. Maybe lab tests showed faster and more extreme deaths than reality. We'll never know. But one thing is a fact: the elites fled. 16th red flag is the rollout of mainstream media taking ownership of the globalist narrative. Many alternative news sources have been buried or even deleted on YouTube to keep the population in an echo chamber of fear, panic, and dependency on the state. And the 17th red flag. Before or at the start of a false flag event, there are some sort of practice exercises taking place. The police were doing practice exercises on the day of many of the terrorist attacks, like the London bombings, the Boston bomber, and the Christchurch mosque shooting. The elite, well before the release of the virus, gathered unsuspecting useful idiots, as the elite calls them, to perform tabletop exercises, brainstorming a watertight system of total control in a pandemic. The United Nations Foundation, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, Johns Hopkins Center for Health and Security, NBC, and Center for Disease Control sent delegates to Event 201 in New York in October 2019. Bill Gates did not bring them to discuss how to prevent pandemics, contain pandemics, or even manage pandemics. Their schedules were about global trade, global finance, and global elite monopoly on communication. A fuller write-up of this can be read at antoinettemesart.wordpress.com, blog Coup, an art form. Event 201 tabletop exercises can also be viewed on YouTube. Anthony C. Sutton was a British and American economist, historian, researcher, professor, and writer who died in 2002. Here are some words from a speech he gave. When Sutton says Washington, replace it with your government. We live in a socialist society, and suppression of information is typical in such societies. To eliminate freedom, one must first eliminate widespread knowledge of the truth. There are 3 levels of information. The first level we would call the establishment version. It's what most people have believed in the past to be true about events in history. The credibility of the establishment has been shattered. People in general no longer believe Washington or anything that comes out of Washington. So this first level is what the government or the establishment wants you to know. Only coincidentally is it the truth. The criteria they use are 2. 1, they say, what do we want them to know? And secondly, they say, is it consistent with what we told them last time? And sometimes they slip up and the statements become inoperable. Then we have the second level of information, sometimes called the revisionist level. It challenges the first level, but it's still based on documents and information released by the bureaucrats and politicians. It does not get to the root of the problem because it relies mainly on facts which they decide can be released. Then you have the third level. It is based on new documented evidence that has to be rooted out on a research point of view. You have to know where to look. You have to know about its existence. You have to demand it. You have to get it declassified. So if this coronavirus outbreak is a deliberate attempt to crush sovereign nations, tank the world's economy, throwing it into deep financial depression, and total oligarchical control over the peoples of the earth, what is the end game? Well, that's simple. The end game is a reset of traditions, customs, and life to conform to the United Nations New World Order Agenda 2030 sustainable goals. And these goals are the elite's desired goals to depopulate the earth and herd the people who they describe as the masses, the great unwashed, cannon fodder, into super cities that are known as open concentration camps. A read of Rosa Qua's book Behind the Green Mask will fill a lot of the holes in your knowledge, exposing the real agenda of the United Nations. The elite over the past 30 years or so have created and released AIDS and Ebola, both devastating African countries, all of which have been unmasked. So they're not willing to pull another false flag like those again. Instead, they're looking for what is known as a soft kill approach. The flus such as bird flu, swine flu, SARS and others fitted the bill. The coronavirus, however, has been further weaponized to interact with 5G, to destroy the body's immune system. It's a whole new beast. As I've said, the elites are on the whole Luciferians, and they hold on to the theosophical belief, which is commonly known as the New Age spiritual movement, but is the same old Babylonian ancient mystery religion. In podcast 3, we'll touch on this a little bit more. These Luciferians chose the year 2020 for this unparalleled international emergency, COVID-19. It got all the propulsion it needed from WHO, the World Health Organization, controlled by Bill Gates, a man dedicated to depopulating the earth, and also funded by the elites. It would appear leading up to this crisis, money was being embezzled and laundered through PEPFAR, USA State Department, the Global Fund, and the United Nations, organizations that refused to have their books audited. And the virus was further propelled via unrelenting broadcasting by the elite-owned media, to be run locally by corrupt globalist socialist governments commissioned to play the people. The people of the West and Europe have fallen victim to unprecedented draconian shutdown tactics that have no grounding in medical science. And as we, the people, are shut away, international airports are still bringing in certain individuals from corona hotspots around the world, making the whole shelter-in-place a farce. However, not all governments are prepared to risk destroying their economies. Brazil's president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and Mexico's president, Bolsonaro, both say they will not be part of this UN scam and have continued with life as usual. So, of course, a backlash of vilifying has been hard and fast to convince the government, trusting Westerners, that there's nothing to see here. Strike hard is a Fabian socialist idiom. Corrupt governments control their citizens by fear of contracting the disease. But it looks like it is just another virulent flu virus given a massive marketing boost. Yes, it is serious for a person with an underlying medical condition. That person should isolate themselves as they would during any flu season. And yes, there is suggestion that is weaponized to do long-term damage if contracted. But many people have been and show no symptoms, so who will know who has and who hasn't? And those that have not contracted this virus in any form soon will through vaccines. Isolation is not the answer to prevent the spread of this virus. It is an answer to prevent the uprising of people while they tank the economy. That is why the police and the army are reinforcing the law. Tanking the economy will, of course, cause high unemployment and depression, moving inevitably to mass rise in crime by desperate people and the elite rolling out of the universal income, which is what they've been wanting to do for a long, long time. And you know the saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. When universal income is rolled out, we will be totally owned. The elites have managed to get the public to jump through hoops by fair and mandatory regulations. These rules have been rolled out across the world to cause catastrophic harm to everything except the ecosystem in line with the UN Sustainable Goals. The UN talks about think globally, act locally, we are told. It might be time that we take that suggestion and start to act locally ourselves. I'm going to finish a Coup to Manipulate You podcast 2 here. In podcast 3, we'll walk through the rules in this surreal world we all live in and extrapolate the hidden agenda behind each rule. In the meantime, if this world suddenly is looking totally out of focus and you need a broad comprehensive course on the how, when and why of what you are experiencing, my book We Are Revolting is an expose that joins dots and can be bought on Amazon. It is on permanent discount to make it affordable to everyone. It is an important read and will give you the truth. Truth is easier to handle than the deception we are being controlled by currently. You can go to AntoinetteJames.com and read a synopsis and a sample chapter of We Are Revolting. There you'll also find free PDF downloads for supporting information to the book. Don't forget a summary transcript of this podcast is on AntoinetteJames.com as free PDF download, link below. You can follow me on Facebook, We're Revolting Book. It is a platform to keep interested parties informed about the elite's tactics that mainstream media hides from the public. If you like this content, you can support me by hitting the like, share and subscribe buttons. Please comment below. Until next time, take care.